You wake up cold. The ground beneath you is hard-packed earth, not your memory foam mattress. Your eyes open to see smoke rising from a dozen fires, and people moving with purpose you don't understand. A woman approaches. She's carrying what looks like a weapon, but her face shows concern, not anger. She speaks, but the words mean nothing to you. Welcome to mourning in a Native American Cherokee village, 1750. You have 24 hours to prove you belong here, or face a fate worse than death. But here's what will shock you. It's not the wilderness that'll kill you first. It's not wild animals or enemy warriors. It's something hiding in plain sight that most people never see coming. Stay till the end. Your life might actually depend on knowing this. Meet Little Wolf, a 13-year-old Cherokee boy who's been awake since before dawn. While you're still figuring out where you are, he's already checked snare traps, identified which direction today's hunt will go, and started preparing tools you've never seen before. You watch him work, thinking, how hard can it be? Then you try to help. Big mistake. The simple task of preparing a bow requires knowing which wood won't snap in cold weather, how to judge string tension by feel, and understanding wind patterns that affect arrow flight. Little Wolf learned this by watching his grandfather for years. You learned archery from a YouTube video. You reach for what looks like a suitable branch, and Little Wolf's eyes widen in alarm. Through urgent gestures, he explains that this particular wood becomes brittle when wet. Information that could mean the difference between a successful hunt and starvation. His grandfather taught him to identify 12 different types of wood by touch alone, each with specific properties for different tools and weather conditions. Dr. Patricia Albers from the University of Utah studied Cherokee daily routines and found something stunning. What looks like simple morning prep actually involves split-second decisions that could determine if families eat tonight. While you're fumbling with basic tools, this teenager is calculating weather changes, animal migration patterns, and resource locations across miles of forest to try to help with fire maintenance and nearly destroy the carefully banked coals that took hours to establish. In Cherokee society, fire wasn't just warmth, it was life itself. Anthropologist James Mooney documented how Cherokee firekeepers underwent years of training to master the delicate balance of airflow, fuel types, and ember preservation that kept fires burning through harsh winters. But your real problems are just starting, and they're about to get deadly. Now meet Ayana, Little Wolf's aunt. She's watching you struggle, and her expression says everything. In Cherokee society, she explains through gestures, everyone contributes or everyone suffers. There's no room for dead weight. Here's the brutal truth. You're not just trying to survive, potentially endangering an entire community that operates on razor-thin margins. Anthropologist John Swanton documented how Cherokee villages survived through precise coordination, where one person's mistake could doom dozens. Ayana hands you what looks like a simple digging stick. Find roots, she indicates. Easy, right? Wrong. You need to know which plants are edible in winter, which ones will kill you, where they grow, and how to harvest them without destroying next year's crop. Cherokee knowledge systems took generations to develop. You have hours. But it gets worse. The digging stick isn't just a stick. It's a precisely crafted tool designed for specific soil types and root systems. The angle of the point, the length of the handle, even the type of wood used, all reflect generations of refinement. You're holding a piece of technology as sophisticated as a surgeon's scalpel, but you're treating it like a garden spade. Watch what happens when you try to dig. You strike too hard, damaging root systems that won't regrow for years. You dig in the wrong spots, missing the subtle signs that indicate where edible tubers hide underground. Worse, you're unknowingly destroying medicinal plants that the village healer, Sequoia, needs for winter remedies. Sequoia approaches, his weathered hands examining the damage. He speaks quietly to Ayana, and you don't need translation to understand his concern. In Cherokee culture, plant medicine isn't just healthcare. It's the difference between surviving epidemics and watching children die from treatable illnesses. The pressure builds as you realize every person around you possesses survival knowledge that would take you years to learn. But the real shock comes when you discover what you're really fighting against. Here's where most people's assumptions completely fall apart. You're not just battling the wilderness, you're fighting your own mind. Take the case of James Adair, a European trader who lived among Cherokee for decades in the 1700s. Even after years of experience, he wrote about the constant mental strain of adapting to a completely different way of thinking, and he had advantages you don't. Modern research by Dr. Amanda Hendricks reveals something terrifying. When contemporary people are dropped into traditional survival situations, most experience complete psychological breakdown within 6 to 12 hours. Your modern brain, wired for instant gratification and constant stimulation, simply can't handle the patient, methodical approach that kept Cherokee alive for thousands of years. While Ayana makes decisions based on seasonal patterns that play out over months, you're panicking about your next meal. While Little Wolf focuses on tasks that require hours of careful attention, your mind is screaming for the dopamine hits you get from checking your phone every few minutes. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. Your modern instincts start sabotaging you in ways you can't even recognize. When Ayana points to a distant ridge and explains through gestures that storm clouds are forming, you glance quickly and think, "Looks fine to me." But she's reading atmospheric pressure changes, wind patterns, and cloud formations that her grandmother taught her to interpret. She knows this specific weather pattern brings flash floods that have killed unprepared travelers for centuries. You dismiss her concern because you can't see immediate danger. This is exactly how modern people die in traditional environments, not from dramatic predator attacks, but from ignoring warning signs they're not trained to recognize. Dr. Richard Nelson from the University of Alaska studied this phenomenon and found that indigenous weather prediction often surpasses modern meteorology in local accuracy. Cherokee weather readers could predict storms days in advance, using environmental cues that escaped even trained scientists. Your modern reliance on technology has actually made you weather blind in ways that could prove fatal. The psychological stress intensifies as you realize how helpless you truly are. As evening approaches, you're about to face your greatest challenge yet: Cherokee social customs that could literally determine if you live through the night. Enter Dragging Canoe, the village war leader. His arrival changes everything. You don't understand it yet, but how you behave in the next few minutes will determine whether you're seen as a potential ally or a dangerous threat that needs to be eliminated. Cherokee society operates on complex protocols that took children years to master: eye contact, body positioning, when to speak, when to remain silent. Every gesture carries meaning that could escalate into life or death consequences. You're walking through a social minefield with no map. Dragging Canoe speaks to the group, and you notice people's postures change subtly. Anthropologist William Sturdivant documented how Cherokee political discussions involved intricate ceremonial elements, where interrupting at the wrong moment or showing disrespect could result in exile or worse. You try to look respectful, but you're unknowingly committing cultural violations that would mark you as either crazy or hostile. You stand when others sit. You look directly at elders when custom demands you show deference. You touch objects that are ceremonially off limits. Each mistake compounds the impression that you're dangerous. The tension becomes unbearable when food is distributed. Cherokee sharing customs aren't just politeness. They're survival mechanisms that prevent conflicts over scarce resources. Dr. Raymond Fogelson from the University of Chicago found that Cherokee food distribution followed precise hierarchies that maintained social stability during harsh periods. You accept food without following proper protocols, inadvertently insulting providers and breaking reciprocal obligations you don't understand. The looks you're getting aren't just disapproval. They're calculations about whether keeping you alive is worth the risk to community harmony. Let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell, a survival instructor who tried this exact experiment in 2019. She lasted 11 hours before begging to quit. Sarah wasn't weak. She was a trained professional who could start fires with wet wood and identify edible plants. But she couldn't handle the social pressure. Cherokee society operates through complex networks of relationships, obligations, and unspoken rules that govern every interaction. Sarah kept making social mistakes that, in real Cherokee culture, would have marked her as dangerous or disrespectful. The psychological stress of constant failure in a society where mistakes have life or death consequences broke her down completely. But Sarah's experience reveals something even more disturbing. She described how the constant vigilance required to avoid cultural violations created a state of mental exhaustion she'd never experienced. Every interaction required calculating multiple layers of meaning while suppressing her natural responses. The Cherokee concept of harmony isn't just social niceness, it's a survival strategy. Research by anthropologist Jack Campisi shows how Cherokee communities maintained stability through intricate systems of reciprocal obligations that prevented the conflicts that destroyed other societies. Breaking these invisible rules didn't just make you unpopular, you as a threat to everyone's survival. You'd face the same mental torture, but worse. At least Sarah understood she was in an experiment. You'd be fighting for actual acceptance in a community where your modern instincts, individualism, quick decision-making, personal space, are not just useless, but actively harmful. The isolation would crush you long before hunger became a factor. Cherokee developed elaborate storytelling traditions, spiritual practices, and social rituals that provided mental stability in harsh conditions. Your modern mind, stripped of technology and constant entertainment, would simply snap. As night falls, you realize the truly terrifying truth about your situation. As darkness falls, you discover that Cherokee nighttime isn't just different, it's a completely alien experience that will push your modern mind beyond its breaking point. There are no streetlights, no ambient city glow, no familiar sounds of civilization. The darkness is absolute in ways that modern people never experience. But worse than the physical darkness is the psychological isolation that comes with it. Cherokee developed sophisticated nighttime protocols over thousands of years. Sentries worked in coordinated shifts, using complex systems of bird calls and hand signals to communicate threats. Night Watch wasn't just one person staying awake. It was a carefully orchestrated security system that required years of training to execute properly. You're assigned to help with Night Watch and immediately realize you're useless. You can't distinguish between the sound of wind and leaves and approaching footsteps. You can't identify which animal calls are natural and which might signal danger. Your night vision, adapted to living under artificial lights, is hopelessly inferior to Cherokee vision that developed under natural conditions. But the real terror begins when you realize how much activity happens in Cherokee society after dark. This isn't a time for sleep. It's when crucial survival work continues. Women work by firelight, crafting tools and repairing equipment that tomorrow's survival depends on. Men share critical information about weather patterns, animal movements, and potential threats. You sit in silence, unable to contribute to conversations that could determine everyone's fate. The social isolation becomes crushing as you realize you're not just useless, you're a liability that's consuming resources without giving anything back. Dr. Peter Nabokov from the University of Wisconsin documented how Cherokee night activities often involved complex spiritual practices that reinforced community bonds and provided psychological stability. These weren't mere customs. They were mental health practices that helped people cope with the constant stress of survival. Your modern mind, accustomed to shutting down with television and social media, has no framework for handling this kind of productive nighttime consciousness. The absence of familiar comfort routines triggers anxiety that builds throughout the night. Here's the revelation that changes everything. The thing that would kill you isn't lack of survival skills. It's your own success. Every advantage that makes you successful in modern life becomes a deadly weakness in Cherokee society. Your ability to multitask? Dangerous when you need focused attention on life or death details. Your independent thinking? Potentially fatal in a culture that survives through group coordination. Your quick problem solving? Useless when solutions require patience and long-term thinking. But there's an even deeper psychological trap waiting for you. Modern people are conditioned to expect immediate feedback and measurable progress. In Cherokee society, many crucial activities show no immediate results. Preparing for winter requires months of patient work with no visible progress. Building relationships requires years of consistent behavior with no guarantee of acceptance. Your modern brain would interpret this lack of immediate gratification as failure, triggering stress, responses that compound your other problems. While Cherokee children learned patience through years of observation and gradual skill development, you'd be fighting mental systems designed for instant results. The psychological studies of survival situations reveal something disturbing. Modern people often become self-destructive when stripped of familiar validation systems. Without likes, comments, achievements, or progress bars, many lose their sense of purpose entirely. Dr. Peter Nabokov from the University of Wisconsin spent decades studying this psychological gap. He found that modern people placed in traditional societies often become suicidal within days, not from physical hardship, but from the complete collapse of everything their minds depend on for stability. The Cherokee boy Little Wolf could maintain focus and determination for weeks during vision quests. You'd be mentally shattered by the first night of absolute darkness and silence, with nothing but your own thoughts and the sounds of a world that doesn't care if you live or die. The truly horrifying realization is that Cherokee society would recognize your mental breakdown as a threat to everyone's survival, and they'd be right. So could you survive 24 hours in a Cherokee village? The honest answer isn't just no. It's that you'd probably be begging them to help you find the nearest European settlement within hours. But here's what's truly remarkable about this failure. It's not a weakness. It's proof of human adaptability taken to incredible extremes. The Cherokee developed one of the most sophisticated survival systems ever created, perfectly adapted to their environment. You've developed capabilities they couldn't imagine, navigating global digital networks, processing massive amounts of information, thriving in urban environments that would completely overwhelm them. Little Wolf could track a deer for days across difficult terrain. You can track information across the entire planet in seconds. Ayana could identify hundreds of medicinal plants, by sight. You can access the medical knowledge of thousands of specialists instantly. Neither set of skills is superior. They're different evolutionary paths that show the incredible flexibility of human intelligence. Your inability to survive in their world would be matched by their inability to survive in yours. Both represent the extraordinary capacity of humans to create specialized societies perfectly adapted to their circumstances. The next time someone romanticizes the simple life of traditional peoples, remember Little Wolf and Ayana. They weren't living simple lives. They were masters of one of the most complex survival systems ever developed, with knowledge bases that would take you decades to even begin understanding. If this video blew your mind about survival and history, hit that like button right now. What shocked you most? Drop a comment and let me know. Want more crazy survival stories and historical secrets? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Don't let YouTube hide these amazing stories from you. Like, comment, and subscribe to join our community learning the truth about history.